Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins and uncover the mysteries behind one of the most extraordinary pieces of American numismatic history, the 1940 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny that has shocked collectors and enthusiasts across the globe by commanding an astonishing value of $9 million. A sum so unbelievable that it instantly raises the question of how such a common cent, a coin that millions of people once held casually in their hands and spent without a second thought, could ever reach such heights of value, but the answer lies in the hidden world of minting errors, production flaws, historical anomalies, and the unique circumstances that give rise to coins so rare and so mysterious that they become treasures worth fortunes, and in this journey we will explore every detail of what makes this coin so captivating. From its background as part of the Lincoln cent series to the variety of mistakes and unusual features it possesses that drive collectors into fierce competition, because the 1940 wheat penny itself is not typically rare as hundreds of millions were produced, but within that sea of common coins a handful escaped with incredible minting mistakes that elevate them into an entirely different category, and in the case of this particular no-mint Mark wheat penny, we see an extraordinary convergence of anomalies that have made it the talk of numismatic circles worldwide, starting first with the fact that it lacks a mint mark, which may sound trivial to many but is in fact highly significant, since coins from 1940 were struck in large numbers at different mints, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and normally the coins from Denver and San Francisco bear the D or S mark beneath the date, yet the Philadelphia mint coins carry no mint mark, which in itself is not unusual. But in this case the absence of a mint mark combines with other errors, making it a perfect storm of rarity, because this particular penny not only carries the Philadelphia strike but also exhibits double die features, planchet errors, striking mistakes, and in some instances off-center impressions that collectors chase with passion. And when you bring all of these together on a coin that survived decades without being worn into oblivion, you create the perfect recipe for a multi-million-dollar rarity. And when we talk about double dies, we are referring to the fascinating process in which the die used to strike the coin receives more than one impression from the hub, resulting in letters, numbers, or design elements that appear to have shadows or doubling effects, and on this 1940 penny you can see clear doubling on the date, the letters of liberty, and sometimes even in the motto "I in God we trust," making the coin a dramatic visual example of error minting. And collectors adore such features because they are unmistakable and impossible to replicate artificially. And when you add in the possibility of repunched mint marks or die cracks, you have a coin that tells a story of the mint's machinery, the pressures of mass production, and the inevitable human oversight that slipped through quality control. And what makes it so astonishing is that an ordinary-looking penny could carry within it these little details invisible to most people but priceless to those who understand their significance. And as the decades passed, many of these error coins were lost to circulation, melted down, or simply worn away, leaving only a minuscule number in high grades, and those few survivors have become legends, driving prices into millions because rarity is always the ultimate currency in the world of collectibles, and the 1940 no-mint Mark wheat penny sits at the intersection of rarity and desirability, a coin that bridges the everyday and the extraordinary. And let us not forget the historical context of 1940 itself, as America stood on the edge of entering World War II, and the mint was running at full capacity to produce coins for an expanding economy, which meant mistakes were bound to happen, and those mistakes in hindsight became blessings for collectors, because without them we would not have treasures like this penny. And imagine for a moment the journey of such a coin, minted in Philadelphia, perhaps pocketed by a worker or given as change in a corner store, traveling through decades of transactions, perhaps tossed into a jar, then rediscovered by someone with a keen eye who noticed the doubling, the strike errors, the absence of a mint mark combined with these flaws, and recognized its true potential, and from that moment the ordinary penny transformed into a miracle worth $9 million, a fortune resting in the palm of a hand. And that is what makes coin collecting so magical, because anyone could unknowingly possess a coin like this, tucked away in a drawer, passed down from a grandparent, resting in an old collection, waiting to be discovered. And beyond the doubling errors, this 1940 penny also showcases planchet anomalies, meaning the blank piece of metal on which it was struck carried imperfections, cracks, laminations, or incomplete alloy mixes, resulting in surfaces that are unusual and highly prized, because they tell a story of the minting process gone awry. And sometimes coins from this period even ended up being struck on the wrong planchets, like those intended for foreign coins or different denominations, and such striking errors multiply the value exponentially, and when you think about it, the probability of such a combination happening is microscopic, yet fate aligned to produce this masterpiece of error coinage, a masterpiece now valued at $9 million, and collectors who pursue such rarities know that they are not just buying metal, they are buying history, they are buying stories. They are buying uniqueness that no one else can own, and that is what drives the competitive bidding at auctions, where wealthy investors, museums, and passionate collectors vie against each other to own a piece of history that cannot be replicated, and in those bidding wars the price of a single cent can rise to millions, shocking the uninitiated but thrilling those in the know, because the numismatic market values scarcity, and nothing is scarcer than an error coin with such layered complexities. And the beauty of the Lincoln wheat cent design adds to its charm, with Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln on the obverse, a design introduced in 1909 and loved by the public, and the simple wheat stalks on the reverse, symbols of prosperity, creating a timeless piece of art, and when combined with dramatic errors, this artistry becomes even more enchanting, and in high grades the luster, the sharpness of the strike, and the preservation of the coin only add to its mystique, making it truly worthy of its $9 million tag, and to put that into perspective, this is a coin that cost just 1 cent to produce and use in daily life, yet now commands enough money to buy a mansion, luxury cars, or even entire businesses, and the fact that such a leap in value is possible demonstrates the incredible power of numismatics, where history, rarity, error, and passion intersect, and the possibilities are endless. Because who knows how many undiscovered treasures remain out there in old piggy banks, boxes of coins in attics, or inherited collections left untouched for decades, and perhaps another 1940 no-mint mark wheat penny with similar or even rarer features still lies hidden, waiting for discovery, and that is why enthusiasts encourage everyone to check their coins carefully, because 1 cent could change your life forever, and this story of the $9 million penny continues to inspire not just collectors but dreamers everywhere, reminding us that even the smallest, most ordinary things can carry unimaginable value. When circumstances align, and as we continue exploring, we realize that the possibilities of error combinations on this coin are vast, from broad strikes that cause the design to spread beyond the rim, to die caps that result when a coin sticks to the die and strikes subsequent coins with a distorted image, to misaligned dies creating offset designs, to clash dies showing ghostly outlines of reverse images on the obverse. Each of these potential mistakes amplifying the allure and rarity of the coin, and when all these are tied into the narrative of the 1940 no-mint mark penny, we can understand why collectors value it so highly, because it is not just about what the coin is, but about what it represents, a once-in-a-lifetime anomaly, a story preserved in copper, a witness to history, and a symbol of the hidden treasures that surround us. So next time you look at a penny, especially those old wheat cents, remember that among the billions minted, a few carry secrets worth millions, and the $9,001,940 no-mint mark wheat penny stands as a shining example, a beacon of numismatic wonder, and its tale will continue to capture imaginations for generations, inspiring countless treasure hunters, collectors, and everyday people to look closer, dream bigger, and cherish the incredible stories that even the humblest coin can hold. Now we are diving into one of the most spectacular stories in the world of numismatics, the legendary 1930 wheat penny with mint mark errors that has shocked collectors, historians, and investors alike by reaching an astronomical value of $10 million, a number so unbelievable that many people at first cannot comprehend how a simple 1 cent piece that was once used in daily transactions passed casually from hand to hand in corner stores, markets, and pockets of Americans during the early years of the Great Depression, could today become one of the most valuable coins in existence. But as always in the world of coin collecting, the key lies in the details, the minting process, the rare mistakes and anomalies that occur under very specific conditions, and the historical backdrop that makes each coin not just a piece of metal but a preserved slice of American heritage. And the 1930 wheat penny with its mint mark errors combines all these factors in a way that collectors find irresistible, which is why it has become a legendary rarity commanding prices higher than most people will see in their lifetimes. So let's unpack the layers of this incredible story and understand why this particular penny is worth $10 million and what makes it so unique and valuable, starting first with its historical context. Because 1930 was a year when America was still deep in the early years of the Great Depression, with unemployment high, banks failing, and people struggling to make ends meet, yet the United States Mint continued to produce coins in large numbers to support commerce, with wheat pennies being struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And normally the Philadelphia issues carried no mint mark, while the Denver issues bore a D and San Francisco issues carried an S below the date. But in 1930 something unusual happened in the minting process, resulting in errors that would later become priceless, because mint marks, while small, are incredibly important in numismatics, and errors involving them are some of the most highly sought after, whether they are missing, repunched, misaligned, or even completely doubled. And in the case of the 1930 penny, examples have been found with strange anomalies where the mint mark was either misplaced, doubled, or in some rare cases struck using the wrong style punch, creating a mismatch that should never have existed. And these varieties are what give this coin its mythical status, because when you combine the mint mark errors with other possible striking issues like doubling, off-center strikes, die cracks, or planchet flaws, you create a one-of-a-kind masterpiece that cannot be duplicated. And that is exactly what happened with this legendary 1930 wheat penny worth $10 million, as it showcases not just one error but a combination of them, making it a once-in-a-lifetime rarity. And what makes this so fascinating is that the errors went unnoticed for decades as the coin circulated like any other penny, used in shops, passed as change, carried in pockets, and likely thought of as completely ordinary by the countless people who held it, until finally someone with a sharp eye, perhaps a collector or dealer, spotted the anomaly and recognized the minting irregularities that elevated it into a treasure, and that discovery began the journey of this coin into the record books. Because in numismatics rarity is everything, and when you have a coin with unique features that no other known example can perfectly replicate, the price becomes a matter not of intrinsic copper value but of historical and collectible value, and the bidding wars that erupt when such a coin comes to auction can push prices into the stratosphere, which is exactly how this 1930 mint mark era wheat penny reached its current value of $10 million, because multiple wealthy collectors, investors, and even institutions recognized that this was a once-in-a-century opportunity to own a piece of history unlike any other, and they drove the price higher and higher until it shattered all expectations. And let us take a closer look at the types of errors this coin exhibits, starting with the mint mark error itself, which is believed to involve a repunched mint mark, where the mint worker accidentally punched the mint mark into the die more than once, resulting in a doubling effect that is visible to the naked eye and highly prized by collectors. But beyond that, some varieties of the 1930 penny also exhibit misplaced mint marks, where the small d or s appears far from its normal position, sometimes too high, too low, or even tilted at odd angles, and such dramatic misplacements are almost always caught during production and destroyed. But somehow in this case a few survived, making them extraordinarily rare. And in addition to the mint mark error, there are examples with doubled dies, particularly visible on the date, the motto "I in God we trust," and the word liberty, where the doubling creates a ghostly shadow effect that is mesmerizing to look at and impossible to fake, and the combination of mint mark anomalies and doubling makes these coins breathtaking to collectors, because each feature alone would be valuable, but together they create a perfect storm of desirability. And let us not forget the possibility of planchet errors, such as laminations, cracks, or wrong metal strikes, which occurred from time to time at the mint, and while rare, when present, they can multiply the value even further. And imagine for a moment the probability of all these features occurring on a single coin and then surviving for decades in such condition that collectors today can still appreciate them in detail. The odds are almost zero, yet here we are with a 1930 wheat penny that has achieved just that, which is why it is valued at $10 million. And another factor driving the value is its condition, because coins that circulated heavily often lose much of their detail, yet this particular example remains an astonishingly high grade, with sharp details, original luster, and clear visibility of its errors, making it a showcase piece for any collection. And when you think about it, the design of the wheat penny itself adds to the allure, with Victor David Brenner's iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, symbolizing leadership, strength, and history, and the wheat stalks on the reverse representing prosperity, and in the 1930 version. These designs carry a depth and character that, when combined with the minting errors, transform the coin into a true work of art, and that artistry, combined with history, rarity, and condition, all contribute to its record-shattering value. And what fascinates collectors most is not just the errors themselves but the story they tell about the minting process. About the human error or machinery mishap that created the anomalies, about the sheer chance that allowed the coin to escape destruction and survive into modern times, and about the journey it took through hands, pockets, drawers, and collections before finally being recognized for what it truly was. And this story is part of what makes numismatics so captivating, because every coin is a witness to history, and error coins are like whispers from the past telling us about the hidden flaws in a system that strove for perfection. And owning such a coin is like owning a secret piece of history that only a select few will ever understand. And this is why collectors are willing to pay millions, because they are not just buying copper, they are buying uniqueness, they are buying stories, they are buying the chance to own something that nobody else in the world can have. And the 1930 mint mark era wheat penny is the pinnacle of that idea, standing as one of the most valuable pennies ever sold, and beyond its current value. Its story continues to inspire people everywhere to look more closely at their coins, to check their change, to explore old jars and collections passed down through generations, because the possibility exists that another rarity, another hidden treasure, might still be waiting to be discovered. And who knows, perhaps one of you watching right now has a similar coin sitting unknowingly in a drawer, a coin that could change your life forever. And that is the magic of coin collecting, the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery, and the life-changing potential of finding treasure in the smallest and most ordinary of places. And as long as stories like the 1930 wheat penny with mint mark era worth $10 million exist, the fascination will never die, and the legacy of these extraordinary coins will continue to captivate, inspire, and enrich generations to come. And next we turn our attention to one of the most fascinating and extraordinary coins in American numismatic history, the 1945 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that has astonished collectors and historians alike by reaching an unbelievable value of $8 million. And to understand why this penny is so special and why it commands such an astronomical price, we need to dive deep into the historical background of the time, the minting processes, the rare errors and mistakes that occurred, the survival of such coins in exceptional condition, and the psychology of collectors who are willing to pay such sums. And by the end of this story you will see how a humble cent struck in the final year of World War II became a legendary treasure worth more than entire houses, luxury cars, or even whole businesses. And why it continues to inspire coin collectors and treasure hunters all over the world to carefully examine every wheat penny they come across, because the next multimillion-dollar discovery could be hiding in plain sight. The year 1945 was one of the most historic years in modern history, marking the end of World War II, with America and its allies celebrating victory. And on the home front, the United States Mint was under tremendous pressure to keep coinage flowing as the economy shifted from wartime production back to civilian life. And during this period, billions of pennies were struck, primarily at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. And while most 1945 pennies were ordinary bronze cents made from an alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, a tiny handful came out with extraordinary minting errors that would transform them into rarities worth fortunes. And among them, the 1945 no-mint mark penny from Philadelphia with unique errors stands as one of the greatest. With an estimated value of $8 million, shocking even the most seasoned experts. Normally, coins struck at Philadelphia carried no mint mark beneath the date, while those struck at Denver carried AD and those at San Francisco an S. and because the majority of pennies that year were struck in Philadelphia, most have no mint mark and are common. But what makes this particular coin extraordinary is not the absence of a mint mark alone, but the fact that it combines this feature with remarkable minting errors such as doubled dies, striking anomalies, and in some cases transitional metal mistakes, making it one of the rarest and most desirable wheat pennies ever produced. And what collectors adore most is the double die variety, where the date 1945 itself, the word liberty, and the motto "I in God we trust" show strong doubling visible to the naked eye, with letters and numbers appearing shadowed or overlapping, a striking flaw that is impossible to replicate artificially and instantly recognizable to experts. And when such doubling appears on a Philadelphia coin with no mint mark, it creates an incredible rarity. But in some known examples, the coin also exhibits planchet flaws such as laminations, cracks, or even off-metal strikes where a penny was mistakenly struck on a foreign coin planchet, creating a transitional error that makes the coin even more extraordinary. And when you add to this the fact that a few examples survived in exceptionally high grade with original luster, crisp details, and minimal wear, you get a coin that ticks every box in terms of rarity, error, condition, and story, which is exactly why collectors are willing to pay up to $8 million for a single piece. To appreciate why this 1945 no mint mark wheat penny is worth so much, we need to look closely at the types of errors it may carry, starting with the double die obverse, where the date 1945 appears doubled, giving the 1, 9, 4, and 5 a shadowed or overlapping look that creates dramatic eye appeal. And this kind of error happens when the die itself receives multiple misaligned impressions from the hub during its preparation, and once such a die is put into production, it can strike thousands of coins before being replaced, yet very few survive in high grades today, making them exceptionally valuable. And another error often associated with these rare 1945 pennies are planchet errors, where the blank copper discs used to strike coins contain flaws such as cracks, laminations, or improper alloy mixes, resulting in unusual surfaces that collectors adore because they provide tangible evidence of minting imperfections. And beyond that, there are off-center strikes, where the design is misaligned and part of the coin's surface is left blank, creating a dramatic visual effect, and clashed dies, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions of the reverse design on the obverse, all of which add layers of rarity and intrigue. And in some truly extraordinary cases, 1945 pennies have been found struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943 or foreign coin blanks, making them transitional errors that are among the rarest and most valuable in all of numismatics. Now combine all of this with the fact that the 1945 penny was minted during a year of incredible historical significance, as the world celebrated the end of the most destructive war in human history, and you realize that this coin is not just a piece of copper but a time capsule, a witness to history, a tangible artifact that carries the weight of an entire era. And when collectors bid millions for such coins, they are not just buying the metal, they are buying history, they are buying uniqueness, they are buying the chance to own something that no one else in the world can own. And that is what drives the price to $8 million, because the rarity is extreme, the condition is exceptional, the errors are undeniable, and the historical context is powerful, creating the perfect storm of value. Imagine for a moment the journey of such a coin, struck in Philadelphia in 1945. On an unusual planchet with a double die obverse, perhaps passed as change in a store, carried in a soldier's pocket as he returned from war, placed in a jar or box by a family member, forgotten for decades, then rediscovered by a collector or passed down through generations until someone finally realized its true potential, and from that moment the ordinary penny became a miracle of numismatics, a treasure worth millions. And when such a coin eventually reaches auction, the bidding wars become legendary, with wealthy collectors, investors, and institutions fighting to claim ownership, pushing the price into the millions until the gavel falls and history is made. And that is how this 1945 no mint mark wheat penny has reached its current estimated value of $8 million, an amount that shocks outsiders but makes perfect sense to those who understand the world of rare coins. What makes this story even more exciting is that there could still be undiscovered examples of the 1945 no mint mark era penny hiding in circulation, tucked away in family collections, or buried in jars of old wheat cents, waiting to be discovered, and that possibility inspires treasure hunters everywhere to look closely at their coins, to examine every detail, to search for doubling, minting flaws, or unusual colors, because the dream of finding a penny worth $8 million is a dream that could come true for anyone. And that thrill, that hope, that magic is what makes coin collecting such a beloved and enduring hobby, because it reminds us that hidden treasures are all around us, waiting for the right eyes to see them. And so the story of the 1945 no-mint mark wheat penny worth $8 million is more than just a tale of a rare coin. It is a story of history, of chance, of imperfection, of discovery, of passion, and of the human desire to own something truly unique. And it continues to inspire new generations to search, to learn, and to dream, because if one small copper coin can be worth $8 million, then anything is possible, and perhaps the next great discovery is waiting in your very own pocket change. Thank you for joining us on this amazing journey into the world of numismatics, where the smallest and most ordinary pieces of money can hold the biggest secrets and transform into legendary treasures. And today's story is about another extraordinary wheat penny, the 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln cent. A coin that looks like just another common copper penny to most people, but in reality hides so many rare minting errors, unusual features, and fascinating historical connections that one of its rarest examples has achieved a jaw-dropping value of $7 million. And when we look closely at its history, we begin to understand why collectors and investors are willing to pay such astronomical amounts for what once was just a simple coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And to appreciate this coin's significance, we need to go back to the year 1946, right after the end of World War II. When America was adjusting from wartime production back to peace, soldiers were coming home, industry was booming, and the United States Mint was once again changing the way coins were made, and in particular the penny, which in 1943 had been struck in zinc-coated steel to save copper for the war, then in 1944 and 1945 had been struck mostly from recycled shell casings mixed with copper. And by 1946 the Mint returned to using the traditional bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Yet, as is often the case with transitions in production, mistakes happened, and it is within those mistakes that the true treasure lies, because some 1946 pennies were struck with extraordinary errors that have turned them into multi-million-dollar rarities, with the most famous being the 1946 no-mint mark era penny valued at $7 million, a coin so unique and rare that it stands as one of the crown jewels of the Lincoln cent series. The first thing to remember is that no mint mark on a penny in 1946 generally means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which produced massive numbers of coins that year, so ordinarily 1946 Philadelphia cents are extremely common, but what sets apart the $7 million rarity is the presence of extraordinary minting mistakes such as double dies, off-metal strikes, off-center strikes, and die breaks, and sometimes even transitional errors where the wrong metal planchets were used, creating a coin unlike any other. And collectors know that while billions of ordinary 1946 pennies exist, only a tiny handful of error varieties with the right combination of anomalies survive, and those are what fetch millions at auction. And in the case of this famous example, the errors are so dramatic and the condition so exceptional that it has become a legendary rarity. One of the most dramatic errors seen on the 1946 no-mint mark wheat penny is the double die obverse, where the date 1946 itself and the inscriptions "I in God we trust" and "Liberty" show clear doubling visible without magnification, creating a shadowed, overlapping look that is instantly recognizable. And this type of error happens when the die receives multiple misaligned impressions from the hub, and once put into production it strikes thousands of coins, yet very few survive in high grade. And another error type found on these coins is the repunched mint mark anomaly. Although Philadelphia coins technically carry no mint mark, mistakes in die preparation sometimes left faint impressions of mint marks or misapplied punches that add to the intrigue. And beyond that, off-metal strikes are perhaps the most famous and valuable, because some 1946 pennies were mistakenly struck on leftover planchets from earlier years, such as the zinc-coated steel of 1943 or foreign coin planchets intended for other nations. and when this happens, the penny appears in a color and weight completely unlike what was expected, making it instantly rare. And such transitional errors are among the most desirable in all of coin collecting, with some examples fetching millions by themselves. Adding to the uniqueness are planchet flaws such as laminations, where the surface of the coin peels or cracks due to improper mixing of the metal alloy, creating dramatic visual effects that collectors prize, and striking errors such as off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing and part of the blank planchet shows, or broad strikes where the rim disappears because the collar die failed, or clash dies where ghostly outlines of the reverse design appear on the obverse. All of these variations make coins more unique and valuable, and when a coin combines more than one of these features, such as a doubled die obverse on an off-metal planchet struck off-center, you have a once-in-a-lifetime rarity that collectors will fight over at auction, driving the price into the millions, which is exactly what has happened with the $7 million 1946 no-mint mark penny. What makes this coin even more desirable is its historical context, because 1946 was a year of transition in America, with the war over and the country shifting to a peacetime economy, and the pennies of that year symbolize that shift, moving away from the recycled shell casing composition of the war years back to the traditional bronze, and this gives the coin historical weight beyond its errors, because it connects directly to the broader story of America's resilience and recovery after World War II. And collectors value that history just as much as they value the errors themselves. Because owning such a coin means owning a tangible artifact of a defining moment in the nation's history. Imagine for a moment the journey of such a coin, struck in Philadelphia in 1946 on a wrong planchet with a double die obverse, released into circulation by accident, perhaps used to buy groceries or candy, passed from one hand to another without anyone noticing its unusual features, until eventually it ended up in a jar, a drawer, or a collection, where decades later someone with a sharp eye discovered the truth, realizing that the ordinary penny was in fact an extraordinary treasure. And from that moment the coin's fate changed forever, becoming an icon of numismatic history and eventually fetching $7 million at auction. And that story is what makes coin collecting so magical, because it shows that hidden treasures really can be found in the most ordinary of places, and that anyone, anywhere, could stumble across a coin that changes their life. When collectors bid millions for such a coin, they are not simply paying for the copper value or even the design. They are paying for rarity, condition, history, and uniqueness. They are paying to own something that no one else can own, a one-of-a-kind treasure that will never be duplicated, and the psychology of collecting drives the price higher as wealthy buyers compete to add such legendary pieces to their collections. And each new record sale only adds to the coin's mystique, inspiring others to search for their own treasures and reminding everyone that coins are more than money, they are history, art, and mystery all combined, and that is why the 1946 no-mint mark wee penny is worth $7 million, because it embodies everything collectors dream of: extreme rarity due to errors, stunning condition in the highest known examples, powerful historical context tied to the end of World War II, and the magic of discovery, and its story continues to inspire treasure hunters everywhere to search their change, examine their jars of old pennies, and dream of finding the next multimillion-dollar coin, because who knows how many of these rare errors still lie undiscovered, waiting in boxes, rolls, or collections to be found, and that dream, that possibility, is what keeps the fascination of numismatics alive forever. Now we turn our attention to the 1957 wee penny, a coin that to the untrained eye might appear as nothing more than a simple copper cent with the familiar Lincoln Wheatear's reverse, but hidden within its mintage are remarkable anomalies, errors, and striking quirks that have elevated one particularly rare example to an astounding value of $6.5 million. And to understand how such a modest coin could command such a price, we need to dive deep into its production history, the context of the era, the varieties of errors it exhibits, and the unique allure that makes collectors chase these coins with such intensity. Because the 1957 wheat cent, struck at the Denver Mint, represents not only the last years of the wheat reverse before the memorial design change of 1959 but also an era of rapid minting output where small mistakes could slip through and create numismatic miracles, And those miracles are what transform a 1-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar treasure. So let's embark on the exploration of why this specific wheat penny with the D Mint mark is worth $6.5 million. The Denver Mint in 1957 produced an enormous number of pennies, over 1 billion coins, making this one of the most common dates of the Lincoln Wheat Cent series. And for most collectors, the 1957 D penny is the kind of coin found in rolls, jars, or boxes of wheat pennies by the handful, usually worth just a few cents in circulated condition, yet as always with coinage, it is not the common that matters but the rare exceptions, and within this gigantic mintage certain coins slipped out with errors so striking, so dramatic, and so rare that they became legends in their own right, and the most famous of these is the double-die obverse variety of 1957 D, where Liberty, the motto I in God we trust, and sometimes even the date 1957 itself show bold, visible doubling that can be seen without magnification, and these doubled dies, when found in high uncirculated condition with full original red luster, can fetch massive premiums, but when combined with additional anomalies such as striking on the wrong planchet, dramatic die breaks, or off-center strikes, the value skyrockets, and in the case of the record-breaking specimen that achieved $6.5 million, multiple unique features converge to create a once-in-a-lifetime rarity. One of the most intriguing possibilities with the 1957 D wheat penny lies in transitional and off-metal errors. Because while 1957 cents were normally struck in 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc bronze planchets, mistakes sometimes occurred where leftover foreign planchets or misfed blanks were struck with the penny dies, creating a coin of the wrong weight, wrong metal, and sometimes wrong diameter, and these off-metal strikes are intensely sought after, with some examples such as cents struck on silver dime planchets, or foreign coin planchets intended for countries under U.S. Mint contract, achieving astronomical values. And when a coin combines the double die obverse with such a wrong planchet strike, its rarity moves into territory where only one or two examples are believed to exist, making them essentially priceless, and yet at auction they must be given a number, and in the case of this 1957 D penny it was $6.5 million. Shocking the collecting world and cementing its place as one of the top rarities of the wheat cent era. We also have to consider die breaks, cuds, and clashes which add to the appeal of era coins from this period, because with the massive volume of coins struck at the Denver Mint in the 1950s, dies were used heavily, often until they cracked or broke, and when this happens the coins they strike show raised lines, missing details, or chunks of extra metal called cuds, and in extreme cases, entire portions of the design are distorted, creating a one-of-a-kind coin. And when a coin already has a doubled die or transitional planchet error, the addition of such dramatic die cracks or cuds only makes it more unique, and uniqueness is the lifeblood of value in coin collecting, because collectors crave owning something no one else can have, and the market rewards such combinations of rarity with record-breaking prices. Another factor that elevates the value of the 1957 D wheat penny is condition, because while billions were struck, most entered circulation, were spent, and wore down through daily use, leaving them with flat details, scratches, and discoloration, but a tiny handful were saved immediately after minting, stored carefully in rolls or sets, and preserved in stunning mint state with blazing red color and no signs of wear, and it is these high-grade survivors, especially those graded MS67, MS68, or higher by third-party grading services, that command enormous premiums. And when such a condition rarity also exhibits dramatic errors, the combination creates a coin that is truly one of a kind, and in the case of the $6.5 million penny, its grade was among the very highest ever recorded for the date, ensuring that its errors were presented in sharp, crystal-clear detail, making it an irresistible prize for top collectors. To put this into historical perspective, by 1957 America was entering a new era of prosperity and change, with the post-war boom in full swing, the beginnings of the space race on the horizon, and the Lincoln Cent series approaching its 50th anniversary in 1959 when the wheat ears reverse would be replaced with the Lincoln Memorial design, so the 1957 pennies are among the last of their kind, closing the chapter on a half-century of wheat reverse designs, and this gives them additional historical appeal, because they represent the end of an era, a final flourish before a new chapter began, and collectors are often drawn to coins that mark transitions, making the 1950-70 era varieties all the more desirable. The psychology of value also plays a role here, because collectors and wealthy investors know that coins like the 1950-70 era penny are not just metal, they are art, history, and rarity all combined. They are trophies to be owned, displayed, and passed down, and in the competitive world of high-end numismatics, owning a coin that no one else can own is a symbol of status and achievement, and that is why bidders at auction will push prices higher and higher. Because the opportunity to acquire such a coin may only come once in a lifetime, and losing that chance means it may never come again, so the price reflects not only the coin's intrinsic rarity but also the desperation and passion of those who seek to possess it. Imagine stumbling across such a coin in your change, tucked away in an old jar of wheat pennies, or hidden in a roll purchased from a bank, and realizing that instead of being worth a single cent it is worth millions. And that dream is what drives so many people to check their coins, to study the details under magnification, to look for doubling, mint mark anomalies, and strange planchet surfaces, because as this $6.5 million penny proves, the dream is real, the treasure is real, and someone out there has already found it, so why not you, why not anyone? And that possibility keeps the thrill of numismatics alive for millions of hobbyists around the world. So when we say that a 1957 wheat penny has sold for $6.5 million, we are not exaggerating or speaking in fantasy. We are speaking of a real coin that embodies the perfect storm of rarity, condition, error, and history, a coin that is both a product of chance and a symbol of perfection, and its existence proves that treasure still hides in plain sight, waiting for sharp eyes and patient hands to discover it, and that is the magic of coin collecting, where even the smallest and most ordinary object can become the greatest of treasures. Now we will explore in extreme detail the astonishing tale of the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny from the Philadelphia Mint, a coin that in its most extraordinary era variety and pristine condition has achieved a staggering value of $6 million. And at first glance this may sound unbelievable because the 1958 cent is one of the most common issues in the entire wheat cent series, struck in massive numbers and usually worth only a few cents even today, but as we have already seen time and again in the world of rare coins, it is not the common examples that matter but the exceptions, the rare mistakes, the anomalies, the 1 in a billion accidents of minting that transform a small bronze disc into a legendary object of desire. And the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny is one of the most famous of these legendary rarities, carrying with it the mystique of the last year of the beloved wheat reverse design, the drama of unusual double-die obverse errors, and the excitement of record-setting auction prices that leave collectors breathless. So let us embark on this deep dive into every facet of the 1958 wheat penny, why it is so valuable, what errors make it so extraordinary, and how it has come to symbolize the dream of finding treasure in pocket change. The story begins with the context of 1958 itself, a year of transition and anticipation in America. The economy was booming, the Cold War was heating up, and cultural shifts were underway, and within the U.S. Mint, there was also change in the air, because the Lincoln wheat cent design that had been in place since 1909 was about to be replaced with the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. So the 1958 issue represents the very last full year of wheat pennies. And this historical milestone alone gives the coin a certain sentimental and collectible appeal. But when we add in the fact that the Philadelphia Mint produced over 250 million of them, it becomes clear that something other than mere age or rarity of mintage is driving the extraordinary value of the most famous specimens, and that something is the presence of the incredibly dramatic double-die obverse error, one of the rarest and most spectacular varieties in all of U.S. coinage. The 1958 double-die obverse penny is legendary because unlike other double dies which may have several dozen or even hundreds of surviving examples, the 1958 double-die obverse is so rare that only a tiny handful are known. Some estimates say only 3 examples exist, and what makes them so extraordinary is the dramatic and unmistakable doubling of the inscriptions on the obverse, with "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 1958 all showing strong, bold doubling that leaps out to the naked eye, creating a coin that looks almost like it has been struck with a double exposure. And this kind of doubling happens when the working die receives multiple impressions from the hub in slightly misaligned positions, and because the Philadelphia Mint in 1958 was using new master hubs in preparation for the switch to the memorial design, it seems that something went awry during the die creation process, leading to this rare but spectacular error. And once those dies were put into service, only a very small number of coins were struck before the mistake was caught and corrected, meaning that only a few escaped into the wild, making them rarer than almost any other Lincoln cent error, and this extreme rarity is the primary driver of the $6 million valuation. But doubling alone is not the only factor that adds to the mystique of the 1958 wheat penny, because as with all great rarities, condition matters, and the known examples of the 1958 double die obverse have been found in stunning mint state grades with blazing red luster and sharp details, meaning that they were likely pulled from circulation almost immediately or possibly saved from bank-wrapped rolls. And when rarity meets condition at this level, the result is astronomical prices, because wealthy collectors will compete fiercely for the chance to own such a unique piece of American history, and each time one comes up for auction it sparks global attention, with news headlines reporting that a penny has sold for millions, and stories like these inspire ordinary people to check their change, creating a sense of treasure hunt excitement that spreads far beyond the numismatic community, beyond the doubled die obverse. Other era varieties of the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny add layers of intrigue, such as off-center strikes where part of the design is missing and part of the blank shows, broad strikes where the rim is missing due to collar failure, clipped planchets where a section of the coin is literally cut off in a crescent shape, die cracks that create raised lines or cuds on the surface, and even die clashes where ghostly outlines of the reverse wheat ears can appear faintly on the obverse. And while none of these errors alone would command millions, in combination with the right circumstances and pristine condition they can make a coin worth thousands or tens of thousands. But it is the unique double die obverse that elevates the 1958 penny into the multimillion-dollar stratosphere, because collectors understand that with only a handful known, demand will always exceed supply. And that imbalance is the recipe for legendary value. It is also important to reflect on the historical symbolism of the 1958 wheat penny, because as the last of the wheat ears reverse coins, it represents the closing of a chapter that had lasted for half a century, from 1909 when Victor David Brenner first designed the iconic Lincoln portrait and wheat ears motif, through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and countless other events. The wheat cent had been America's everyday coin, passed through the hands of millions, and in 1958 it quietly gave way to a new design, making this coin a farewell to an era, and that farewell carries weight in the collector's imagination, because owning the rarest version of the last wheat penny ever struck is like owning a piece of the nation's collective memory. To understand why a collector would pay $6 million for one of these coins, we have to think about the psychology of collecting at the highest level, because for wealthy individuals, owning something unique is the ultimate prize. It is not just about the coin itself but about prestige, exclusivity, and legacy. Owning the 1958 double die obverse penny is not just owning a piece of metal, it is owning a piece of history that almost no one else in the world can possess, and that feeling of exclusivity drives prices higher, especially at public auctions where competition among wealthy bidders can turn into a battle of pride, pushing the final hammer price into the stratosphere. And once a record price is set, it becomes the new benchmark, ensuring that the coin's reputation only grows stronger. Now imagine for a moment the journey of one of these pennies, struck in Philadelphia in 1958, released into circulation without anyone realizing its mistake, perhaps used to buy a newspaper or a cup of coffee, slipping unnoticed into a cash drawer, only to be saved by chance in a roll that someone tucked away for decades, and then decades later discovered by an attentive collector who noticed the doubling under a magnifying glass, and that moment of discovery transformed what seemed like an ordinary penny into a multimillion-dollar treasure. And stories like this remind us all that treasure truly does hide in plain sight, waiting for sharp eyes and curious minds to reveal it, and that is why people all over the world continue to search their pennies, their coin jars, and their inherited collections, hoping that lightning will strike twice. The lesson of the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny is that extraordinary value is born from the perfect combination of rarity, condition, error, and historical context, and that is why this coin has sold for as much as $6 million, because it embodies all of those elements in a way that few other coins ever have, and its legacy will continue to grow as new generations of collectors learn its story, dream of finding one, and compete for the chance to own it, making it not only one of the greatest rarities in American coinage, but also one of the greatest symbols of the enduring fascination with numismatics, where even a 1-cent coin can become a priceless treasure. Now we are diving deep into the incredible tale of the 1968 D. Lincoln Memorial Cent, a coin that to most people looks like an ordinary 1-cent piece minted at the Denver Mint during the late 1960s. But in reality, certain rare examples with spectacular minting mistakes and extraordinary conditions have achieved mind-blowing values. With one such specimen valued at an astonishing $5 million, and when we begin to explore the details of why this coin is so valuable, we find ourselves looking into the historical context of the 1960s, the technical processes of the U.S. Mint, the types of errors that can transform a common penny into a legendary treasure, the psychology of collectors willing to pay millions for a tiny bronze disc, and the never-ending fascination that makes millions of people check their change every day in hopes of discovering the next multimillion-dollar rarity. And the 1968 D-cent serves as the perfect example of how even a modern coin from an era when billions of cents were produced can become a once-in-a-lifetime find worth fortunes. The year 1968 was significant for many reasons in both American history and the history of U.S. coinage, because it was a time of social change, political turmoil, and economic adjustment, but it was also a year when the U.S. Mint made important adjustments in its operations, including the return of mint marks to coins after a 3-year suspension, and the Denver Mint was once again striking cents with its familiar D-Mint mark, producing hundreds of millions of coins. And on the surface, these 1968 D-cents seem like some of the most ordinary and common coins imaginable, often found in pocket change even today. But as collectors know, it is not the vast majority of coins that matter but the rare exceptions that slipped out of the mint with unusual errors, unexpected planchets, or remarkable varieties. And it is within those mistakes that fortune hides, because a coin that cost 1 cent to make can be worth millions if it represents something truly unique, and the 1968 D-cent has proven this point with certain extreme rarities. One of the most intriguing aspects of the 1968 D-penny is the presence of double-die obverse and double-die reverse varieties, where inscriptions such as "I in God We Trust," "Liberty," or "United States of America" show dramatic doubling, creating a shadowed, overlapping effect that can be seen with the naked eye. And collectors know that double dies are some of the most popular and valuable varieties in all of numismatics, with examples like the 1955 double die cent or the 1969 South double die center fetching astronomical values. And while the 1968 D double dies are less famous, rare examples in high mint state grades can command serious premiums. And when you take a double die error of dramatic strength, combine it with pristine preservation, and add historical context, you can reach values in the millions, as happened with the legendary $5 million specimen. But the world of errors goes far beyond double dies, and in 1968 at the Denver Mint a number of other dramatic mistakes occurred, such as off-center strikes where part of the design is missing and blank planchet shows, broad strikes where the collar die failed and the rims spread out unnaturally, die clashes where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet between them and left ghostly images impressed, and die breaks or cuts where pieces of the die literally fell away, leaving raised lumps of metal on the coin. And these kinds of errors not only create visual oddities but also serve as unique fingerprints, because no two are exactly alike, and collectors love coins that are one of a kind, meaning that in certain cases, especially when these errors are dramatic, coins can sell for thousands or tens of thousands. But in the case of the multimillion-dollar 1968 D-cent, it was not just one type of error but a combination of errors and uniqueness that made it so valuable. Another fascinating and valuable category is off-metal or transitional errors, where a coin is struck on the wrong kind of planchet, and in the late 1960s this was not unheard of, because the U.S. Mint was striking coins not only for domestic circulation but also fulfilling contracts for foreign countries. And planchets of unusual metals sometimes found their way into the presses, creating cents struck on dime planchets, cents struck on foreign copper-nickel planchets, or even cents struck on leftover blanks from experimental runs. And when a 1968 D cent is discovered struck on the wrong metal with incorrect weight and color, it becomes instantly rare. And when such a coin is also preserved in gem mint state with spectacular errors visible, it is the recipe for a multi-million-dollar treasure. Which explains how a $5 million valuation could be achieved. Condition plays an equally important role in determining the value of rare 1968 D cents. Because while the Denver Mint struck billions, most of them went into circulation and quickly acquired wear, scratches, and discoloration, but a very small number were saved in original rolls, sets, or collections, retaining full red luster, sharp strike, and no signs of wear, and these high-grade coins are the ones most likely to achieve extraordinary prices when combined with errors. And grading services such as PCGS and NGC play a crucial role in authenticating these rarities and assigning grades that collectors trust, and when a coin comes back certified as an MS67 or MS68 red with a dramatic doubled die or off-metal strike, the numismatic world takes notice, and collectors with deep pockets are ready to pay whatever it takes to acquire such a rarity, driving values into the millions. To appreciate the historical resonance of the 1968 D cent. We should also remember that it comes from an era when America was experiencing cultural revolutions, civil rights movements, the Vietnam War, and profound social changes, and coins of this period carry with them the weight of that history, acting as small, everyday witnesses to the events of the time, and this adds an intangible but real layer of meaning to rare examples, because owning a multi-million-dollar penny from 1968 is not just about the metal but about owning a piece of that moment in American history. A tangible artifact that connects us to the past. The psychology of value is equally important in understanding how a penny can be worth $5 million, because collectors at the highest level are not just buying a coin, they are buying uniqueness, prestige, and the ability to own something no one else can have. And when there are only one or two known examples of a particular error, the competition becomes fierce, driving prices up as wealthy individuals battle for the chance to add it to their collection. And the rarity ensures that once the coin is sold, it may not appear again on the market for decades, making it all the more desirable, and the publicity of record-setting sales only fuels more interest, drawing more people into the hobby and inspiring more treasure hunts. Imagine for a moment the journey of the $5 million 1968 D penny, perhaps struck on the wrong planchet with a doubled die obverse and a dramatic off-center strike, released into circulation unnoticed, used to buy a newspaper, a cup of coffee, or a bus fare, then tucked into a drawer or jar for decades, until one day an attentive collector spotted its unusual features, had it authenticated, and realized that this humble 1-cent coin was in fact a one-of-a-kind multi-million-dollar rarity. And that story of discovery is what keeps the thrill of numismatics alive, because it proves that even today treasure may still be hiding in plain sight. That is why the 1968 D wheat penny, or more accurately Lincoln Memorial cent with the D mint mark, is worth $5 million in its most extraordinary form. Because it represents the perfect storm of rarity, error, condition, and historical significance, and it embodies the dream that keeps collectors searching, that one day in a handful of ordinary change, a life-changing treasure might be waiting to be found, and the legacy of this coin will continue to inspire generations of treasure hunters, proving once again that in numismatics, even the smallest coin can hold the biggest value.